Hello and welcome back to the Digital Marketing Podcast. My name is Kieran Rogers.
I'm Louise Crossley.
And I'm Daniel Rolls.
And today we are talking about free AI marketing tools.
So this one is a little bit of inspiration, some things we've been coming across, because you'll be seeing ChatGPT everywhere at the moment. The kind of more advanced chatbot that's suddenly arrived.
I'm over it.
Yeah,
I'm so over it now.
It's everywhere.
When I brought this one up, I said, we're going to do it on free AI marketing tools. And I could see Kieran's face going, oh, really? I mean, I'm sick of this, really. But you've looked through some of the tools. You're keen.
Tell
the listeners to be keen.
No,
Come on.
listen, this is good.
Right.
Listen up. You're going to learn some really sexy, exciting stuff here.
So where this comes from is a good kind of friend and business partner of mine, Vincent Sider, who's an absolute AI expert, has started this thing called AI Radar. So it's airadar.getinference.com. Get Inference being his company. He does training in organizations, stuff like that. So a bit of a plug for Vincent. We'll put that in the show notes as well. But he's basically put together a platform that brings all of the latest AI tools into one place, categorizes them, and it's really focused on marketers. So I thought, I'll go for and have a look at that. Also some other things that we kind of come across. So we put a bit of it's basically a toolkit episode with some crazy tools that are really interesting, exciting, but focused on this AI side of things. Again, everything will be in the show notes, targetinternet.com/podcast. You can get all of the links there.
It's almost a tips and tools episode. It's stealth.
Everyone loves a tips and tools episode.
It's a bit of a cheat, basically.
Get pencils ready. Start making notes, people.
Right. First of all, the Chat GPT, we'll get it out of the way, Kieran, so you can stop huffing and sighing about it, okay? But what I think is really important about Chat GPT is how you prompt it.
It's easy for you to say.
It's not at all, right? I'm having to concentrate. So essentially, if you go, what's the weather? Or you ask it some sort of basic stuff, it will respond, and it's not very clever. If you go through and do really detailed briefs for it, basically, it could do some really clever stuff. So the first one is there's something on here that was create an imaginary world. And it's basically probably 2 sides of A4, if you imagine that amount of writing, as a prompt for the AI. And it essentially takes you through the process of creating an imaginary world with imaginary places and imaginary characters, and creates a story. Now, I was very dubious of how good this would be. 2.5 hours later, and I kid you not, 2.5 hours later, I was there enthralled still with the whole thing. So you can have a look at the prompt. We'll put it again in the show notes. And it's not that complicated, but it's basically telling the chatbot to act like a story narrator, but to ask the person questions to find out what kind of world it is, what kind of characters, it will come up with ideas and all these kind of things. But I ended up creating, this is so geeky, Nexus of Magic and Machines is a cyberpunk world where technology and magic coexist, but are often at odds with each other. The government is shrouded in secrecy and rumours of conspiracy run rampant. The year is 2060. But it was brilliant. It created these characters, and it was kind of a mix between a cyberpunk and a bit of a Harry Potter.
You should pitch it to Netflix.
So what happens, right?
It could be a thing.
But from a creativity point of view, I was really interested in this because I hadn't seen an example of the chatbots being that creative. This blew my mind. Now, this morning, a friend of mine who's an artist came out and said, if I start using AI tools to help me with my art, and she's a really incredibly skilled artist, okay? Abby Overland, by the way, for everyone, and I'll put her stuff into the show notes as well. But she was basically saying, how happy are you with me using AI tools? Would it be something good? Are you against it? She's not using them at all, I should point out. She was just talking about she doesn't know where she stood with it yet. 45% of people said, yeah, that's a great idea, but 55% of people said, no, I do not like that at all. So there's a discomfort with this. But the thing is, no one's going to be able to tell if you've used these tools as part of the process. Elon Musk came out this morning and said goodbye homework in reaction to the fact that actually what you can do with this is say, act like a 13-year-old person and write a report on this topic. So not only can they get the chatbot to write a report, they can get it done in a tone of voice of a particular age group or education level and things like that. So the ability to prompt the chatbot effectively becomes important. We can discuss some of the ethical issues maybe a bit more in a moment.
Well, it's like even with creating the stories at school, for example, when I was like 15, they always do like yearly school competitions where you have to write the most creative story you can.
Yeah.
Whereas now you can just prompt the AI.
Well, this is it. So is that a good thing or is it a bad thing? I mean, one thing I would say is that it was creating stories that were a little bit generic, maybe
Yeah.
a bit obvious, and so on as well.
But look at any recent hit TV series. Follow a bit of a formula.
Well, everything
don't they?
follows a formula to some extent, right? I mean, if you look at films, they all have a narrative of some description within them, and there are a number of formulas we kind of follow within that, which is interesting.
Studio execs are famous for saying, "I want the same but different." Which
Yeah,
is why
right,
we end up with
100%.
Fast and Furious 173.
Well, that's it, because it sells, right? Because people like it. So, on this, within this AI radar tool, is this brilliant section on, it's called prompt craft.
Yeah.
So prompt craft being the ability to create prompts for these AI tools. There are other ones other than ChatGPT. Google are working pretty heavily on one at the moment as well. But for example, act as a position interviewer. So I went through and said, interview me for a marketing position. And they said, well, how much experience do you have? And I was like, I've got 25 years experience and I run the digital marketing department. And it replied, very impressive. Thank you very much. And then it asked me some other questions, but it wasn't really commenting particularly. It was just asking questions.
Yeah.
Well, as a screening process, having that, recording it, having a read through something could be quite useful. As a first instance, how I feel about being interviewed by an AI, is it fair, is it not? I don't know. Act as a character from a particular movie. Act as a football commentator, a stand-up comedian, a motivational coach. I had a go at this one. The motivational coach is my favourite because it's so cheesy, motivational quotes that it will encourage you can do it, you need to be positive, and all these kind of things. So it's
Was it a
brilliant.
version of you wearing Crocs with goatee beard?
No, it wasn't. It wasn't.
With Crocs.
Did it not?
I love Crocs.
Yeah, Crocs are on trend again. You've gone
Yeah,
full
that
loop.
Whole subsection of
You have
culture.
to, exactly. So
gonna happen.
you need to, like your flares, not that time around, this time round, it's all
Yeah.
very complicated, Kieran. We'll speak about it after. Okay. So let's get into some of the tools that I've come across that Vincent has obviously put into his platform as well. The first one has sent me off on multiple tangents and actually cost me a lot of money. I'll explain why. This is namelix.com, L-I-X at the end, and it basically creates ideas for brand names. So you put in what you do as an organization, and it will come up with ideas. So I went in, I don't know if I want to give this one away because someone else is going to go and register it now.
Yeah.
I put in online digital marketing training, as in what Target Internet, our company, does, and it came up with all these different brand names, but you have some selection criteria. And what you can do is say, I want like brandable names like Google, which don't really exist as words already, and so on. Or I want combinations of words or words that are, misspelt slightly, but kind of still make sense. And I went in and I put this stuff in and it came out with maybe 200 different brand names, all logoed up. It had created logos for each of them as well, which were pretty spot on. And I'm going to give this one away and someone will go and register it. But it came up with Digitace. And I was like, oh, I like that.
Digitace.
Yeah, I really liked it.
It's like a digital sugar.
No, digital ace as in ace.
Oh,
at some-
Ace.
Yeah,
Oh,
Ace.
right. I was thinking Taze.
No.
That's
right.
another one for
Right,
you.
yeah, thank you very much. So I then went immediately to Google Domains and I was like, is the .com available? Which is the question you should always ask. And it was, but it was £2,500. I was like, it's a bit whimsically. It's quite a lot of money to spend on something I'll probably never use. Yeah. But then the .co.uk was available. And, and I went through lots of them and you were doing the same.
I did exactly. Funny, we hadn't swapped notes, but I did exactly the same. Faced with 200 different logos and brand names. And what's amazing is you click into a particular logo that you like, and then it gives you multiple variations of that logo, and they're all pretty nice. They kind of work.
So that was the first one. It blew my mind. A lot of fun. Have a look at it. Be careful you don't like me and end up spending lots and lots of money on domain names you'll never use.
Treble
it
the stock
just-
value of 123 Reg.
I think it probably has, right? Yeah.
Does it just do the initial research phase? Because then obviously you've got to check for other maybe similar brands.
This
that
is a
use
very
that
good
name.
point, actually. I go, this is amazing. And then you find out there's a
Copywriting.
multi-million, billion-dollar brand that's trademarked that name already. So you're absolutely right. You do
Gotta
need
be
to check those
careful.
kind of things. The voice of reason in the room is normal.
Yes.
So yeah, check that. Check, just because the domain's not registered doesn't mean that it doesn't exist in a different variation, but it's good for stimulating ideas. And that's what I think a lot of these tools are good for, is stimulating some of the thinking in the first place. Let's move on to the next one. This one, I think we're actually going to be using. This is vidyo, vidyo.ai. When we do a video like this, we'll go through and that will be edited into a really good, sequenced, tidy, nicely edited, produced piece of video. And then comes the job of going through and taking out 30-second, 15-second, 1-minute segments, which actually can be really time-consuming and to go through and do. What this will do is take a piece of video, and you can do it in two ways at the moment. You can upload a video, or you can point it at a YouTube video. And it's in beta, but that actually works pretty well at the moment. And it will go through, and if you're using the free version, it uses a few basic templates. If you pay for it, it will go through and use your branding, your typography, all those kind of things. And it will create little sequences of video that you can use in social media. But what's super clever is that it's really good at picking out a segment of the talking that makes sense.
Right.
So when we did it on ours, it picked out the intro. Welcome back to the Digital Marketing Podcast. And it just took that as a segment. And then it took Kieran asking a question. Well, what about this? And then you would respond. So it was really nice at doing that. And then you can go in and tidy them up and tweak the subtitles, the closed captions and all those kind of things as well. It took a video. With the free version, you get a number of hours of video processing for free every month. With the paid for version, it's unlimited. I think it's only about $15 a month or something like that. But essentially, it takes a huge amount out of time out of this. So really good use of AI and finding segments.
For small teams with low budgets, this is brilliant.
Well, I think even with it, because it can get really expensive even on bigger budgets. And I think and even for videographers, it's going to potentially speed things up so they can put their magic into it, because it's still going to get it wrong, like any of these tools. But it speeds up the working process. And actually, these tools are there to augment us, not to replace us. And I think this takes out some of the legwork.
It's like the modern word processor, though, isn't it? Nobody sits there with a typewriter. Typists wouldn't say, "Oh, I feel like I'm cheating using, Word and Grammarly."
I did see someone in Hoxton in a hipster cafe with a typewriter.
Oh, I love that.
And I was slightly blown away by how hipster it
They're
was.
really expensive on eBay now. Yeah.
Anyway, so video.ai, have a look at that. Again, show notes, targetinternet.com/podcast. The next one, I'm not going to give a judgment on, but I want to just caveat some of these tools. This was Osmosis Studio. And the idea of this is that you go in, you give it some prompts, and you give it a picture of your product, and it will do you a beautiful product shot for advertising, but generated using AI tools. So I went and said, that sounds quite interesting. I'll give it a go for the podcast. I went in, and it took me to a Typeform form. Now, it very clearly said it was in beta, so that's fine. And I filled in a load of sequences, and it says, it will arrive in your inbox. Now, what it seems like to me at the moment, and I could be wrong, is that they've taken all those prompts and then a human is going to go off, use all those prompts, use AI tools to generate something. They send it to you, and then you select if you're going to use it, then you pay for it. But my point is that some of these tools at the moment are kind of held together with people just trying to throw a minimal viable product together. And that's absolutely fine for a beta or a test product, but they're not entirely tested. And some are, some aren't. And we'd love to hear from Osmosis. I popped them an email to get in contact, and we'll talk about them again as well. So it's no judgment on them. But it's this whole thing of literally, it might look great, but it might not be held together particularly well in the back end. However, it did get me thinking. If you use something like Typeform to take prompts from someone, you use Zapier to feed that into ChatGPT or DALL-E, the art creation tool, and then use Zapier to pull that back into an email and trigger it in an email, you could automate that whole workflow. So marketers now have the tools, code-free, to use AI tools to generate things and trigger them through, and so on as well. So I think this is the very beginning of things becoming a lot easier to do, bearing in mind that these tools can now write code. So I just thought that was interesting. So, Typeform, Zapier, or the alternatives, connecting together with some of these AI tools, interesting things will start arriving. But be careful because of that, how reliable they are, how robust they are, how big the team is behind them, we don't know.
There's an element of, though, if you've got somebody that's expert, they are, orchestrating the AI and the end result. I think that's, that could be a real sweet spot, because actually, we're quite early on with this current revolution. I think things have just gone on. This is like AI 2 or 3.0, isn't it? It's just like moved up a notch in the last 6 months massively. And some of the results aren't perfect, some of them aren't great. So you have that conductor,
early
that
websites,
maestro.
websites, right? Covered in animated GIFs, like hundreds of them, and different colours and thousands of fonts. And it was like, oh, someone did a beautiful website. This is exceptional. So it was that difference between the two, like MySpace pages in the beginning.
Recently, I saw a hipster in a cafe building just that. No, I didn't. It's a typewriter joke.
I understand. Everyone understood. They just didn't laugh. Anyway, moving on. The next one isn't a free one. This
Right.
is a paid for
Free-ish?
one, but it's used at it's not even free-ish. It's
Free
definitely
trial?
there's a free demo.
Right,
There we go,
nice.
free-ish.
But what I was going to say is that this one is used by big brands already. Memorable.io. So if we go back to iQuant,
Yeah.
that had recreated eye tracker studies using AI that was 90% accurate. We have a special deal for podcast listeners to get a month's free trial. Again, it's in the show notes. This one looks at ads and tries to work out how effective they're going to be for TikTok, how effective they might be for Instagram, things that might need to be changed. And it's really good from the case studies I've seen of it as well.
What does it do? What does it tweak?
So basically what it's analysing is looking at thousands and thousands of images like machine learning that have worked in a particular platform for a particular category in a particular sector. And it's saying, how does that image compare? What are the elements it hasn't got? So we know if you look at a YouTube thumbnail, there are certain things that seem to work and certain things that don't, faces, all those kind of things as well. What you've got to be careful of that is you don't want to be the same as everyone else. Just because it works for everyone else doesn't mean that reflects your brand. That's one of my big things about YouTube, is that we debate this all the time. The thumbnails is normally, 5 shocking things that make me $1 million. And someone pointing at it, and I'm like, I don't like that. Why the silly face, right? But it works, and there's always that
Clickbait,
balance
isn't it?
off. Well, it is, and it's always that balance off between what works and what's effective, and you've got to find a bit of a balance, I guess. But you've got to be true to your brand and your tone of voice.
Will
and so
there
on.
ever become a time when that just becomes so painfully cliche that it doesn't work?
I personally,
I'm waiting and it's just not happening.
but I wouldn't click on that stuff.
No.
So if I see that, I don't click on it, and I need to think. And we're going to do this in
Who
another.
is doing that though?
Well,
because it clearly
most
gets
of the
results.
YouTube audience.
No, but it's like one of those things. This is something I noticed recently: is that retailers, when it comes to a sale, are the most lazy organisations in the world. Right. They all do the same thing, and we used to do this when I was at Fatface. Is you put up huge red banners with white writing on them, saying 50, 60, 80 up to.
But that prompts
off.
us because we know what to expect. We know a red banner with writing on it means, but I'm going to get a discount. So my brain goes, oh, discount.
But is there not some scope for somebody somewhere to just come up with a new way of doing that just blows everybody's mind? That's the thing.
There is.
When you follow the crowd.
But people more and more want honesty now as well. So like if you follow a video and it's got all this clickbait on it and then you go and it's not actually what you were looking for, you're just going to annoy people.
Well, this is an interesting debate. What's the difference between clickbait and a good title? And all it is that
Delivering on the promise.
Well, that's it.
Yeah.
So if it says 5 shocking celebrity moments, you won't believe number 3. And I didn't believe number 3. And it was the third one, as opposed to going, where's that picture I was looking for? That's the difference, right? So one is clickbait, one is this is a good title. But it doesn't mean that everything needs to be sensationalist, because otherwise you're on a race to the bottom. Now, we're tangenting a little bit here, but this is the risk of some of these tools, and this is certainly not what Memorable.io does. Theirs is actually really, really clever. But the problem is you go, well, this works most times, so we'll just do more of that. And you kind of get that echo chamber effect where you just end up everyone doing the same thing. So I completely agree with your points. Yeah, the idea that doing something slightly different, standing out, the idea that actually being honest and transparent is really important, and so on as well. We're rebranding Target Internet at the moment. You've seen some of this stuff. You haven't seen all of it yet. But basically, it's slightly, the YouTube stuff, more corporate than a lot of the YouTube stuff. But there's a certain authority to that as well. I mean, corporate's maybe the wrong word, but it has a certain level of seriousness to it. Kind of fun, but it's got the right tone, I think, because it's trying to reflect the fact this isn't just some, I want to get views, here's some advice. Here's real business advice that's been tried and tested, and actually our brand is on trust. So I think all of these things you've got to be careful how you use them. But there's some big brands using this already, so it's worth taking a look at. Next one, competitors.app.
Desperate to try this.
Yeah,
I
love
discovered
it.
it this morning when you showed it to me. I'm like, oh, that's good.
So it's kind of like social media monitoring, because it will monitor your competitors' social media profiles. It will also look at their website for changes, but also it gives you an email address to subscribe to your competitors' email list, and it will receive their emails. Then, every time they do anything different, send an email, change the website, update their social media, it will notify you on a dashboard, but it will pick out things that are getting traction. And it will tell you what's working, what's not, what are the keywords, what's the traction, all those kind of things.
Kind of want to get lazy and do this with my own brand.
Well,
Why not?
But you put your own in as well. No, you can, and it will monitor your brand for you as well. So you
Tells
can see
you what's getting noticed.
And if you've got a big team, really important, because then you're going to be able to see what's going on elsewhere in the organisation. And I remember a lot of the big brands that we worked with over the years, they were kind of like, yeah, we did this, but we didn't know the team over there, the direct mail team, were doing this, or the email team, or the Facebook team. So actually, it's really good, and it won't give you data immediately. It will take 24 hours to look at the social media, a number of days to the email stuff. You get it free for 15 days, I think. So you can get a kind of taster for it, and then it's paid for. But even in the 15 days I've been playing around with it, brilliant results, really kind of clever stuff. And it seems to be literally in the 15 days they've updated it 3 or 4 times. So obviously dedicated to improving it. So it's worth taking a look at as well. I want to move on to one more, and then I want to talk about some of the limitations of these tools. The next one, which is nice because a lot of the places you can play around with AI image generators are not free, or they're a bit technical. They're not that easy. There's a little bit of friction getting into them. This is stockimg, as in stockimg.ai. And you go into this, and it's using DALL-E, the image generation kind of AI, but it's using it in quite a specific way for marketers. So it goes and it allows you to create social media images, posters, and those kind of specific things. And you put a topic in it, and it will generate it for you. It allows you to download it. So it's kind of taken DALL-E and put it into a very specific framework, which makes it a bit more usable. And you get 10 free credits. So you can go in and generate 10 different images, which I really liked. One of the problems with DALL-E is that it will generate an image, but it's not hugely high resolution. But they've connected to this other free tool that I've never seen before, which is upscale.media. And upscale.media will basically take an image and scale it up in size and resolution, and does it without losing too much resolution. It's quite nice.
I'm in love with that
yeah,
already.
Really.
A number of times clients selling you low res.
And you're like, oh, I can't use this.
Like TIFFs. And it's
yeah,
like, oh.
yeah. And this is really nice for doing that. So have a look at stockimg.ai, have a little play around with it, but also this upscale.media is really useful for improving those things.
How is it that you go about and use that then? Do you give it prompts? Describe
Same as the other
around?
ones, yeah. So you go through and say, I want a poster of X, Y, and Z. So I went through and said, I want a book cover. So that was one of the options for a digital marketing book on this topic. Now, this is where the limitations come in. These AI image generators, if they do a human face, it's kind of like this morphed, blurred human face. It's a little bit terrifying. And if they do text, it doesn't actually read anything. It's kind of made up like hieroglyphics-y kind of language to some extent at the moment. And there are ways of doing it, but it's quite difficult to say, I actually want these words on the front at the moment. So what it was good for doing is creating a book title, and it came up with some really beautiful designs, but the words were nonsense. But you could then take that and go to your designer and say, could you make this real?
Again, it's a starting point, isn't it?
Yeah, and it's part of that creative process.
Does it just give you one flat file or a layered file you could edit?
This is flat. This is one of the challenges as well. So again, you could use it for inspiration. You couldn't really chop it up the way it's kind of created at the moment. I mean, that's a really good point. For example, that the idea of a layered file, the AI would have to work slightly differently. And so these will develop these things over a period of time. You'll notice in a lot of AI images, there's like a blurry bit on one of them that's kind of 2 bits have morphed together and so on like that. I was playing around with the image extender. So you take an image and you add a bit to the left of it, to the right of it.
It builds the background out.
Yeah. This is pretty scary.
I love that. Where's that?
Oh, we'll put that in the show notes as well. Yeah. So I put it in, and the classic example is you take a painting, a classical painting like the Mona Lisa or something like that, and you can expand the background and it stays in style. I did it of our kitchen and my puppy, so Walter, sitting in the kitchen, and my Arga is now 30 feet long. I mean, it's so posh, you have no idea, right? It's got hundreds of ovens.
Stretched limo.
It's a stretched limo of Argas, right? It's quite amazing. So it did some weird things like that. It did some things like you'd be sitting and there'd be someone, do you see their legs sitting opposite you? And there was no one there. And it's like, that's
You can direct
creepy.
it, can't you? Or does it just
No, you take a box and you could say extend image. But you could say extend image with person sitting there. My kitchen table is quite tidy, I'd like to have, This basically went through and added loads of rubbish on the table, litter and all sorts of things. So it's interesting and slightly creepy. Yeah. So it's not good at human faces at the moment. Some of them are. It's not good at text and words like that as well. But we were learning. But it goes back to the prompt. If you prompt it well, but there's an art, like learning a computer language, you know how we've learnt search in Google? Yeah, we kind of know.
It took a while, didn't it?
Yeah, you need to know that you phrase things in a certain way and certain sequences of words, and if you do this, it's going to give you a load of junk. Yeah. That's what we're learning with this, but it's more complicated because it's really, really smart.
Oh, obviously, a lot of these things are quite visual, Daniel. Is there?
Yes, not ideal if you're listening to us on the podcast other than YouTube. So
thinking.
on the show notes, targetinternet.com/podcast, as ever, we've got screenshots, we've got videos, we've got examples of prompts and those kind of things as well. So it's all together in one kind of package. So go over there and take a look at that. I read a news story about the fact that Google have looked at this and gone, we need to kind of catch up and do some stuff about this as well. And there was interesting because there's people coming out of Google and saying, look, we need to improve our tools, otherwise we're going to lose. This is the first threat to Google in terms of people using them in different ways. So I think early stages, lots of problems, need to be aware of them. Marketers need to know what tools are available to them to streamline their workflows. They need to really know the ethics and some of the risks of using these tools, and they need to understand it enough to judge, should I use this, shouldn't I use it?
See, I think it goes broader than that.
Okay.
Because actually, if you look at a lot of these tools, they're cross-functional.
That's a very good point.
Some of these tools could be very useful for the graphic design team, or very useful for people that you're outsourcing stuff to even. And actually, I think it's time that everybody, not just Google, every business needs to take some time to A, allow their staff to play around with these tools, and then B, reformulate the current processes to work out where these fit in and how to use them. Otherwise, you've got a very dangerous free-for-all and lots of really random, unpleasant stuff and good stuff, but stuff's going to happen.
But also business risk, right?
Yeah.
You need to look at this and go, how could this disrupt my business? How could someone use this to do, already, there's an amazing TikTok account called ai.explains.ai. And it's an AI-generated face with an AI voice explaining AI concepts. And it's got like 5.6 million followers, I think, when I looked at it. And I think, what a gas this is, right? Someone has basically generated this thing, put a load of prompts in, set it off, and they've got millions and millions of followers on TikTok. And it's getting really good levels of engagement as well. When we get into the uncanny valley, which is that bit where I can't tell if it's real or it's not, if that avatar looks enough like me and you and you, do we need to sit here? Do we need to feel our videographer who you can't see sitting over here? Do we all need to be here? He's probably going, yes, you do. Yes, you really do need to be here. But the point is, how could this disrupt things? Does it speed things up? Does it streamline the workflow? Yeah. Or actually, is this something that actually the human element is really important? Like people's reaction to art that I said, no, art should be generated by humans. Should it? I mean, what level of art, when you start using a pastel or a paint or charcoal, that's technology, okay? It's a tool that you use to generate art. If we didn't have those things, we'd be generating art using dance or whatever it may be, just using our bodies as the tool.
Some of us still do that.
Exactly. Exactly. So the point being is that it's the tool, and every single technology from VHS video cassettes, video nasties, or whatever the technology is, that everyone's terrified of it. The genie's not going back in the bottle. We need to take responsibility to learn these. Not going, I don't like it, because this is moving pretty quickly. There's some good books on this as well about the ethics of it.
Yeah, there are going to be lots of people that don't like this.
I understand why.
Do you know, even for everybody listening, you're going to come across some of these tools and you're going to massively feel like somebody's just stomped all over your toes, because that's what I do.
Would you remember the editing and Descript for the vocal
when
tics?
you showed that to me, I was really upset for at least 3 days.
Just
and
to
then
contextualise, basically in Descript.com, it does the audio editing, and it will go through an interview and pick out the ums and the ahs, right? Yeah. And rather than Kieran having to sit there manually edit everyone out, which took hours, it must have been very tiresome.
I've spent 6 years of my life getting really good at that.
Right. And now suddenly it's
in one morning,
irrelevant.
You show me a tool that does it, and I'm like, that's what I do.
But did you ever enjoy doing it?
No, but this is the journey that I went on, because I'm like, oh my God, that makes a big part of what I'd done for ages utterly redundant. But then you realise, no, that's brilliant. I can get on with other stuff. This is the thing. So, we're all quite comfortable with delegating things to other people. And actually, I think increasingly we're going to need to get comfortable with delegating to AI. And it's not about saving money on people. Not a million. We're a million miles away from that. Because actually, people can do things that AI can't. There's actually a brilliant campaign at the moment run by the British Army with a soldier picking up a child in a war zone and comforting it. And then I think the caption is something like, soldiers do amazing things no one else could do, or only a soldier could do this.
Right, okay, yeah.
And that's the thing. It's bringing in our humanity, bringing in our sense of, right and wrong, bringing in our sense of being able to just have empathy and understand and create meaning to all this. And that's the thing with, for me, that's kind of the answer for that artist in a way, because actually when I'm buying art, I'm buying into someone's human experience and interpretation of a unique and brilliant set of things that mean something to me. Can you have that same relationship with something randomly created by a machine? No, because it hasn't got that. And I suppose you might be able to find random meaning in it, but it gets complicated.
But it's not random. Okay, and this is maybe a closing thought for this thing, because it's not random. It's learning from everything that's come before, which is kind of what our brains do to some extent. When does it get the point when you can synthetically create empathy that's so exactly like empathy that it's empathy?
You gave us an example earlier with that interview question when they came back to you and said, that's very good. And when you said that, I felt, that's really nice. And now I feel like I feel a connection with this being. It's not being, it's AI.
It's not yet.
Yeah, but it's hard.
Then we get into, and this is when we start into the ethical stuff. So there's a book that I've read on this recently. I'm going to put this into the show notes, and I'll put that in. But targetinternet.com/podcast, all the show notes are there. Have a look at all of these tools, have a play around them. We'd love to hear what you think. As normal, there's a contact form on there as well. Thank you very much for listening to the Digital Marketing Podcast.
Please subscribe for more videos like this and visit targetinternet.com for more free digital marketing resources.